So right now, we simply have the opportunity to take existing analog ways of doing business and updating them and upgrading them.
Hi guys, welcome back to Value.Tokenized. We are CryptoTwins. Today we're talking to Katya Fisher, partner at Greenspoon Marder LLP, a major business law firm in the United States. Katya is leading blockchain practice. Today we will be discussing taxation, how not to get into trouble, and some of the recent regulatory updates in the space. Hi Katya, thank you very much for joining us today at Value.Tokenized. You're a leading blockchain practice in Greenspoon Marder LLP, a major business law firm in the United States, which recently launched the blockchain track, as far as I understand. So as a lawyer, generally, how did you start exploring blockchain and cryptocurrency track yourself?
So I had my own law practice for quite some time before I joined Greenspoon Marder. And my specialty was always in working with international companies and international entrepreneurs on setting up their businesses in the United States. So I have a pretty wide range of areas that I have experience in. I've handled a lot of corporate law, corporate structuring, setting the businesses up here. I'm licensed before the United States Tax Court. I've represented clients in tax disputes. I've helped with tax structuring. I have background in intellectual property and software licensing, and I work with a lot of tech companies on helping them with their international agreements, their end user license agreements, privacy policies, and IP protection. And I've even worked in business immigration because of the fact that a lot of my foreign clients that wanted to come to the United States or do business in the US would then inevitably ask me, well, how do I lawfully work here? How do we send over some of our top management and experts? So it's a pretty large scope of work that I've done over the years. With respect to blockchain and cryptocurrency, in the last few years, a lot of my clients just started coming to me with issues that were specifically related to the industry, or told me that they were going into the industry either as founders of projects or as investors. And said, Katya, you're going to have to learn about this industry because you're coming with us. So I said, okay. So I came at it from a different background than, let's say, for example, a securities lawyer. Even though I'm familiar with a lot of securities issues and I've worked with clients over the years and things like capital raises and the like, I come from more of a corporate and tech background. But I went ahead and I started helping clients, and I remember I holed myself up for a week and got my hands on every single piece of reading material that I could find with respect to the industry to understand what is blockchain, what is cryptocurrency. And at the time, there wasn't that much to read. It's not like now. But when I came out the other end a week later, I said, okay, you know what? This industry is awesome. This is amazing. And this is a regulatory minefield. So I'm in. Let's see what I can do. So that's how I got into it.
And right now, I think the crypto winter that we've been seeing, like for the last maybe a year or even more, it's over. And Bitcoin price is above 11,000. And how, in your opinion, it is affecting the industry, in general, and maybe interest from clients as well? Do you see more people coming with addresses?
So first of all, I think it's very early days. I mean, crypto spring just started, a few days ago. So that's the first thing, that we haven't really seen the market correct itself yet. We don't really know what's going to happen next. That being said, yes, obviously there's a very, very different energy around the industry. There are a lot of people who have reached out to me just through social media, people who I had a friend who I remember from elementary school who wrote to me yesterday and said, Katya, you're really doing well with all this cryptocurrency stuff. What is it exactly? So all of a sudden, people want to know what it is. People are interested again. People are excited. Obviously, the energy within the industry has changed tremendously. I mean, people are kind of renewed again. People are excited about what it is that they're doing. And the ones who braved it through the crypto winter crypto winter are very, very pleased with themselves. So that's been fun to see. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's really exciting. I think that Facebook's announcement of Libra has obviously given a huge boost to the industry, not only with respect to the price of Bitcoin going up, but also with respect to the legitimacy of the industry. Because I think that now when you talk to a lot of people who don't necessarily understand the industry or who have always dismissed cryptocurrency as being some kind of, as not being something to take seriously, they're now taking a look at it and starting to understand, hey, wait a second, maybe there's something here. So I think the fact that the industry is becoming legitimized is great for everyone involved.
Talking about Libra cryptocurrency by Facebook. Well, it's not really a cryptocurrency, so it's
no, it's a crypto, but it's not real blockchain because it's centralized.
Yes. Yeah, so how does it look from a legal standpoint?
I think first of all, let's start with it's not a real cryptocurrency, it's not a real blockchain. One of the things in this industry that we have an issue with even to this day and will continue to have an issue with is semantics, right? Because when we talk about blockchain, what are we talking about? When we talk about crypto, what are we talking about? When people talk about enterprise blockchain, there are lots of people within the industry who say that's not blockchain, that's distributed ledger technology, it has nothing to do with it, it's against the ethos of blockchain. When people talk about cryptocurrency, they fight like crazy over what it means to be a cryptocurrency. From my vantage point, I think it's fine to allow these things to be encompassed by these big buzzwords for the time being, because you're not going to have mass adoption and you're not going to have people outside the industry becoming interested and really learning what all of these differences are without just giving them very, very basic rudimentary terms and understandings. So a lot of the infighting over what is blockchain, what is crypto, what is this, what is that, I understand its importance within the industry, but outside of the industry, it's important to also just simplify things tremendously. From a regulatory perspective, with respect to Facebook and Libra, obviously there are a lot of questions. And a lot of those questions will remain unanswered until Libra actually is launched. So it's something that's really fascinating to see. One of the big issues that's on everyone's mind is with respect to privacy and user data. So Facebook does not really have a wonderful reputation with respect to how it treats its users in terms of their privacy and their data. This is something that everyone knows. A lot of the discussion has been around the idea that Facebook now, through its Libra launch, will be putting its claws into users' financial data, as well as their favorite bands or anything of that sort. That's a big open question. How Facebook is going to truly treat user data with respect to financial information remains to be seen. Because first of all, to a certain extent, the coin is decentralized. Facebook doesn't have complete total authority and control. Facebook has developed a consortium. Facebook is developing a foundation in Switzerland. There are other parties that are going to have an interest and a stake in this coin. In addition, Facebook may, frankly, for financial reasons, find that it's more lucrative to protect user data and encourage the proliferation and use of its coin through the notion that it's no longer abusing its users than to go ahead and just blatantly use their financial data. But we don't know yet. We don't really know what's actually going to happen in the real world despite anything that they say.
One more question regarding privacy. So just recently, FATF ruled that all global crypto exchanges are obliged to share customer data when they're transferring funds between firms. What does this mean for the industry and for the privacy of users?
So with respect to the FATF put out recommendations. Those recommendations are supposed to be implemented by member countries within 12 months. Member countries are not obligated to implement recommendations. However, if they do not comply, they do end up on a blacklist. Therefore, it is generally in the interest of every country to comply. In this particular case, it seems that these policies and these recommendations were led by the United States. which is not surprising. The US is trying to be a leader with respect to making sure that cryptocurrency is not being used for terrorist funding, with respect to AML compliance and the like. A lot of the suggestions that have been made are very much in line with the policies that the United States already has. So the US is really just trying to force other countries to comply with what it sees as the right way to go. There has been a lot of concern over these recommendations and whether or not organizations are actually going to be able to implement a lot of these policies. What is the real world sort of, what is this actually going to look like if it becomes implemented? I think one of the big concerns is the idea that this could provide such a deterrent effect that it would cause a lot of users to go more underground and actually go against the reasons for it. But again, it remains to be seen. We'll see what happens. We'll see what occurs. I believe there's a G20 summit coming up just this week where there will be a lot of discussion, and we'll see.
I have a different question regarding tokenization, because this is one of the major trends happening right now, and about a security token offering specifically, because this is not really a new word already in the US, like in Europe, for example, as well. But there is still a lot of uncertainties in this space as well. And in your opinion, what is actually happening from the regulator's standpoint, and what we need to have in mind, or anyone who wants to do an STO in the US, what they should think about?
So in the United States, with respect to an STO and tokenization, it's important to understand that for the time being, tokenization is simply taking an existing securities offering and putting it in a digital wrapper. There are lots of technologists out there that love to talk about all of the new types of concepts and ideas and means and manners in which tokenization could transform the world. It's great, it's very exciting, we're not there yet. So right now, we simply have the opportunity to take existing analog ways of doing business and updating them and upgrading them. And that in and of itself is actually quite exciting, right? Because it creates efficiency, it eliminates some of the use of middlemen in the marketplace, and it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, that in so many other areas of our lives, everything has become digital, everything has become faster, cheaper, more efficient. And yet, if I'm working with a client who's doing a capital raise, everything is still done in terms of, classic paperwork. You're still working with broker dealers. You're still working with all of the same types of systems that have been in place for a very long time. That being said, from a regulatory perspective, the laws that we have in place, for the most part, are completely and totally applicable to this new industry. If you're doing a securities offering, you're still going to be complying with securities laws. So if you're doing an STO and it has anything to do with the United States, you're going to either be looking at conducting a public offering, or you're going to be looking at one of the exemptions that are available to issuers. So obviously the most famous is usually the 506, Regulation D, private placement, where you're allowed to solicit an unlimited amount of money from accredited investors who are individuals who make over $200,000 a year, or who have a net worth of over $1 million, not counting their primary home residence. This is pretty standard. This is something that I like to say in BC, before crypto, was a very normal and standard way of raising equity for startup companies, and it's not something to be particularly scared of.
And it's interesting, we just recently heard in one of your speeches that, for example, that 200,000 is actually, it's not that high sum of money, for yearly income. And actually, there are a lot of people who can be accredited people in the US. And this is an interesting, because a lot of people think that there are not so many accredited investors, and actually that's a huge number of people.
Absolutely. Look, there are plenty of people who don't make $200,000 a year. Obviously, not everyone in the United States is doing that well. That being said, security tokens still open up a tremendous market. So if you take a look, for example, at commercial real estate, the best commercial real estate deals traditionally have been closed off to most investors because the minimum buy-in is prohibitively high. So let's say you have a major building in the city of New York that you're looking to sell, and the minimum buy-in is $500,000 or 1 million, or let's say it's $10 million. Well, there are lots of accredited investors out there who make over $200,000 a year who might be able to invest $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, but they're not able to invest $10 million or $50 million into a project. So if you all of a sudden have something like tokenization, which will make it much easier for issuers to deal with a much larger pool of investors, because of the fact that managing that cap table will become simplified, you're still opening up the market to a much bigger audience.
Yeah, this is one of the important benefits. That's just something I wanted to say.
Yeah. And a lot of people were very excited about Reg A Plus in regard to security token offerings, which also are referred to as mini IPO, if I'm not mistaken. And do you see many companies filing Reg A Plus exemption, actually getting approvals for this?
So there are companies that are filing for Reg A Plus. So one thing that you have to remember is that Reg A Plus and Reg CF, which is regulation crowdfunding, which allows you to raise 1.07 million per year among non-accredited investors, and Reg A Plus, which allows you to raise up to $50 million a year among non-accredited investors, so basically crowdfunding at a very high level. These are initiatives that were introduced by the Jobs Act in order to try and help democratize investment in the United States. The Jobs Act is fairly new. These regulations have only been available for a few years. Reg A Plus offerings have only been granted to, I believe, around 100 companies so far in total, and none of those companies are in blockchain or conducting token offerings. Right now, you have a number of companies in the past year that have filed for Reg A Plus approval. They're still awaiting approval. Which company is actually going to obtain approval remains to be seen. I do believe that it will happen. I believe that the SEC does want to make Reg A Plus a viable option and opportunity for these types of projects. But I think that the SEC is being extremely cautious with its approvals and wants to make sure that it's working with the right projects. And so we haven't actually seen a Reg A Plus in the wild yet. It's still a little bit of a fantasy.
And what's going on in blockchain industry in terms of taxes? In one of your recent LinkedIn posts, you said that we really need to start educating the tech industry about taxes. So what's going on right now?
There's a lot going on right now. That's a big loaded question. But taxes are an area that I think deserve a lot more attention in this industry than they've been getting. Everyone loves to talk about the SEC. From morning to night, obviously discussing the Howey test, discussing things like Reg A Plus. It's pretty popular and it's a very common topic. With respect to taxation, people have to remember this. The IRS is about 5 times bigger than the SEC. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that the IRS is biding its time, but the IRS will become a major regulatory body in this space and will begin to assert its power sooner than you think. So there are a few issues that people need to think about within the industry when they think about taxation. Actually, there are a lot, but I'll start with the basics. So the first issue in the United States has to do with underreporting income. The IRS has recently announced that it's going to start launching audits against taxpayers to see if they have been underreporting their taxes with respect to cryptocurrency gains. So some of the issues that we are going to see are as follows. You have a lot of individuals out there who are investing in cryptocurrency and who are not reporting their gains if they have sold their cryptocurrency, if they have converted their cryptocurrency into cash, if they have traded their cryptocurrency, because people forget that cryptocurrency under IRS guidance is to be treated as property. And when you exchange one property for another, that's a taxable event. So if you're a crypto trader and you're going back and forth between your Ether and your Bitcoin and your Litecoin, and you're not reporting that, there may be a significant issue there. Other issues that exist with respect to tax audits have to do with reporting overseas accounts. So we also have an issue in the United States that individual taxpayers are subject to what is known as FBAR compliance. They have to disclose ownership in foreign accounts of over $10,000. There are plenty of individuals out there who hold cryptocurrency in wallets outside of the United States who have not been compliant. That's something that is going to be subjecting them to significant risk with respect to audits by the IRS. I think another issue that to me is one that we haven't seen yet, but I'm pretty confident we will, is with respect to ICOs. So a tax question that I have is as follows. In 2017, beginning of 2018, we saw the proliferation of ICOs. We saw a lot of money being raised. We saw the notion that these tokens were utilities, right? Utility tokens, therefore we can bypass securities laws because we're selling a product. Then when we started to see the SEC come in and assert its dominance over the industry, we started to see a lot of projects that would work with securities attorneys to conduct compliant offerings with respect to securities laws. So they would say, okay, we're going to do an ICO, but we're going to do it as a Reg D private placement memorandum. So my question becomes, if you have a token offering and you're selling the token, and the token represents, let's say, equity in a company, like a security token might, or debt, that's non-taxable to the issuer. So again, going back to BC, if I'm working with a client who has a startup company who's selling shares in his company in exchange for investment capital, that's a non-taxable event to the issuer. That's an investment. If I'm conducting an ICO, even if I'm complying with securities laws, what is the tax characterization of that token? Now, I know that there are plenty of projects out there that simply reported taxable income. So either they would take the position, the way that Kik did, that it's not a securities offering, this is a pure utility, they're selling a product, they're going to pay taxes on the income earned on those sales. But there are other projects out there that have complied with securities laws, but the tax nature of what it is that they offered is extremely unclear. Those offerings that were conducted in 2017, 2018, you have until the following year to file a tax return, which means that it's this year that most of those projects are filing. And my guess is that most of them are on extension, because that's something that's very, very common in the United States. People go on extension because they need time to go ahead and put their books together and the like. That tells me that the IRS is not going to have the opportunity to review a lot of these projects until 2020. So I'm very interested to see what happens next year with respect to audits being opened on ICOs and projects that were conducted in 17, 18.
I think probably last question for today. Also in regard to taxes and to taxation, a lot of people previously from blockchain, especially ICO background, are very uncomfortable with regulations. Generally, when it comes to securities, everybody was trying to avoid it by all means. And now a lot of people are unfamiliar with tax rules. What is the best place to start and to get information about it and to not get into trouble, obviously?
I think that if you have not yet done anything that might get you into trouble, the best place to start is to hire an accountant and to hire a tax accountant, especially if you're, for example, someone who's from overseas, you're working with the United States, you want to work with an international tax accountant who is able to advise on such matters. If you're already in a position where you're worried that you might have already done something that might be inappropriate, that's a good time to contact a tax attorney to go ahead and give you guidance and work with you. And obviously, it's a little bit of a promotion for attorneys everywhere. It's good to have a tax attorney at all times from the beginning to the end, but certainly if you're concerned about actions that you've taken, that's really a great time to go ahead and speak with a tax attorney and just understand what your risks are and figure out what you can do next. But if you're at the beginning stages, if you're looking to invest, if you're looking to set up a project, if you're looking to set up a company, I think that it's very important to work not only with lawyers who can advise you on securities laws or on financial laws and banking laws, but it's very, very important to have the right tax counsel. And I have seen over and over again in this industry that that's an area that a lot of issuers, entrepreneurs, investors tend to overlook when they're trying to figure out how to do business. And I think that they would be extremely remiss if they didn't look into hiring adequate tax counsel.
Okay, Katya, thank you very much for the advice and for information that you shared and for being with us today. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Obviously, classic disclaimer, none of this was legal advice, just providing some friendly information, but it was wonderful speaking with both of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This was Value.Tokenized. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Twitter for short versions of the videos. See you soon.